Grant Hill is one of the bigger what could have beens in NBA history. But as far as his career with the Pistons, he was a very productive player for them. And he most certainly deserves consideration as a top 10 Piston of all time. So let's go ahead and break down his career with the Pistons. Hill played 435 regular season games as a member of the Detroit Pistons. He averaged 21.6 points per game, shot 47.6% from the field, and 25.6% from three. He averaged 7.9 rebounds per game, 6.3 assists per game, 1.6 steals per game, and 0.6 blocks per game. His 21.6 points per game rank 5th in Pistons history. His 6.3 assists per game also rank 5th in Pistons history, and his 1.6 steals per game rank 5th in Pistons history. Grant Hill scored 9,393 regular season points, and that is 9th in Pistons history. He had 2,720 assists in the regular season, which ranks 5th in Pistons history. He had 694 steals, which ranks 8th in Pistons history. Hill had 5 seasons with the Pistons, averaging 20 plus points per game, 5 plus assists per game, and 5 plus rebounds per game. That is number 1 in the history of the Detroit Pistons. And to get even more specific, he also had 5 seasons of averaging 20 plus points per game, 5 plus assists per game, 5 plus rebounds per game, and 1 plus steal per game. And even if I switch that steal to blocks, that 25, 5, and 1 type of season, Grant Hill, as of right now, is the only Piston to achieve such a stat line. Hill also had 5 seasons of averaging 20 plus points per game, and that is top 4 in Detroit Pistons history. Hill had 178 total games, playoffs and regular season, of having 20 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds. That is 2nd in Pistons history. He had 148 games of 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 steal. That is 2nd in Pistons history. And again, even if we switch that steal to a block, those 148 games of 25, 5, and 1 would rank 2nd in Pistons history. His 29 triple-doubles, which also includes the playoffs, is 1st in Pistons history. His 153 double-doubles are 9th in Pistons history. So Hill, as we can see, was a very productive player when he played for the Pistons. And his production even won him Rookie of the Year in the 1994-95 season. Hill was a very productive player, but his career in terms of winning started really rough. Prior to Hill being drafted by the Pistons were pretty bad with a 20-62 record. And then Hill came in, he helped improve the record a little bit, getting them up to 28-54. That's still pretty rough. Then Hill gets a competent head coach in Doug Collins. Collins was able to come in and improve the Pistons' offense. The Pistons actually ranked lower in points for, going from 21st to 25th in the first season under Doug Collins, but the Pistons' offensive rating jumped from 24th to 15th. The biggest effect Collins had was getting the Pistons' defense under control. The Pistons ranked 22nd in points allowed prior to Collins' arrival, and he helped get it all the way up to 2nd. And he helped get their defensive rating all the way up from 27th to 7th. And Doug Collins helps Grant Hill take the Pistons to the playoffs for the first time in his career. The Pistons finished 46-36. And then in Hill's second year with Doug Collins at head coach, Hill was able to lead the Pistons to a 54-28 record. Now, don't get me wrong, Doug Collins was by no means some Hall of Fame or outer-worldly head coach, but he was definitely the coach that Hill needed. When Grant Hill was on the Pistons, he actually carried them kind of a lot. He led the team in 3 out of 5 stats 2 times. And in those 2 seasons, the Pistons finished with a 66-66 record. Now, Hill actually led the Pistons in 4 out of 5 stats 2 times. And you can't even say, oh, he's just stat stuffing. When Hill was on the Pistons, their best seasons came when he was leading the team in a bunch of stats. The Pistons had a 164 record when Hill led his team in 4 out of 5 stats. So if we combine it, Hill led the Pistons in 3 out of 5 stats or more 4 times. And in those 4 seasons, the Pistons finished with a 166 and 130 record. And in the seasons where Hill didn't lead the Pistons in 3 out of 5 stats or more, or he led the Pistons in 2 out of 5 stats or less, the Pistons only finished with a 70 and 94 record. So if you want to argue that Hill having all these stats and leading the team and all these stats was stat stuffing, no. Those stats that Hill was putting up were absolutely necessary if the Pistons were going to win games. The best chance the Pistons had of winning was for Hill to carry them. Now, Hill was a very productive player for the Pistons, but unfortunately, he was never able to lead the Pistons to a playoff series win. Why couldn't he do it? He carried his team a lot in the regular season, but once the postseason came around, it just stopped working. But let's break down what went wrong. On this slide, I listed Hill's points per game, his field goal percentage, and his three-point percentage in some of the series. And I also listed the stats that he was leading his team in. In the 1996 playoffs, Hill lost to a 60-22 Magic team. In all honesty, Hill just lost to the far superior basketball team. That's pretty much all that can be said about the 1996 sweep against the Magic. In 1997, the Pistons lost to a 56-26 Atlanta Hawks team in a 5-game series. Hill averaged 23.6 points per game and 5.4 assists in that series. Unfortunately, in Game 5, the Hawks and their stingy defense led by Dikembe Mutombo were able to limit Hill's production to 21 points on 37.5% from the field. Hill did manage to lead the team in points, assists, and steals in Game 5, but the Hawks as a team were just a little bit better than the Pistons as a team. Now, on to the 1999 playoffs. The Pistons yet again lost to the Hawks. This was a lockout-shortened season, so that is why the wins and losses don't add up to 82. In that 1999 series, Hill led the team in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, and he was tied for a team lead in blocks. He shot 45.7% from the field in that series. But again, the stifling Hawks defense in a series deciding Game 5 was able to limit Hill to 21 points and 37% from the field, and they were able to hold the Pistons below 80 points. Hill was able to lead the Pistons in points and assists in Game 5, and he was also tied for the team lead in rebounds, but it just did not end up being enough. And then in 2000, the Pistons lost to a 52-30 Heat team, and they got swept. Hill didn't even play the entire series. Could they have won one game had Hill played the whole series? Well, we'll never know at this point. Hill definitely had his shortcomings during his time in Detroit, but he was a very, very good player. The Pistons actually eventually traded him for Ben Wallace, and we all know how that turned out. It turned out pretty okay. But with that said, Hill was a very productive player. Hill may have had his shortcomings in the playoffs at times, but it is what it is. It definitely would have been interesting if Hill had managed to stay healthy for the entirety of his career and to see what he could have been. But the earlier part of his career definitely gives us a good glimpse of how good he was. Grant Hill is absolutely worthy of consideration to be a top 10 Piston of all time. That will be all for this video. What do you guys think of Grant Hill? Do you think he should make the cut, or do you not think he should make the cut? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching.